society is over. It's done. I don't know if any of you have heard this from me before, because I have mentioned this in a previous lecture. So I don't know if you may recall it, but Dr. Livny's, as his view of the world and as he sees it, and I think he's a person with a lot of depth and a person with a lot of deep, moral belief and understanding. And in the way he sees the world, he said, by the time the Holocaust occurred, you could say the Holocaust itself was a death knell of Western Christian civilization. Basically, I guess you could say, in other words, depends what you're looking as a center. But from a moral perspective, that was the end. That civilization had stooped as low as it could possibly go, with no one responding, none of the powers of the world properly responding. And you could say that the fact that the world just went about its business after this event is proof of that. And so I'm going to go right into it. It's a very long, obviously. I mean, the book is hundreds of pages, and like every really line is filled with incredible wisdom. So it's something I could recommend. It's a deep book, but it's really worth reading. It's a kind of an eye-opener, shocker. Dr. Livny is of the Orthodox Zionist camp, and he is a disciple of the son of Abraham Isaac Kook, Tzvi Yehuda Kook. And so he's a deep believer that Judaism, together with the reestablishment of the state, is the beginning of the answer to the problems of the world. But let me just begin by reading a little bit of what he has to say here. So I'm on page 23 of the book. In effect, no one can entirely escape moral responsibility for the unmitigated defeat of a civilization that saw during the Holocaust the collapse of all its moral structures. So he's doing two things over here. First of all, he's putting the blame on everybody. It's one of his fundamental premises is that in his understanding of Judaism, we are all responsible, not just for our personal life, but even for world events. We all have a role to play, and I guess you can almost say it's almost as if he believes that if no one else is doing something, we must respond. In other words, not only in our own, as Chabad focuses more within our own families, on our own life, within our own communities, step by step. But his view seems to be a little broader in that he's saying we need to respond to current problems that are going on and need to try to fight those as well. And I think I believe that this particular point is particularly resonates for the B'nai Noach community. Because I think as non-Jews, basically, you make up the majority of the population. There's a great more of identification with the majority of the population. If I get up there with this beard and this big yarmulke and tell people what I think Americans should be doing, I mean, maybe people will listen. I don't know, but it's many won't. Because they can't identify with me. And obviously, as we learned, is one of the 7 laws is the law of justice of establishing courts. And if we look at that in a broad view, that means affecting civilization around us. We have to look at that there's a responsibility the nations, the non-Jews have to the nations as a whole. So in any event, so this is something we see as a backdrop in his first sentence, that no one can entirely escape moral responsibility for the Holocaust. Can you imagine? It's such a statement, powerful statement. But he's calling it the unmitigated defeat of a civilization that during the Holocaust saw the collapse of all its moral structures. I'm going to go on to the next sentence. The reality is, since the beginning of the 20th century, a whole series of revolutions had already severely shaken the fragile foundations of our civilization. Political, ideological, economic, technological, artistic, and moral revolutions. There's not a single field of our culture that was not shaken up from top to bottom. Politics, art, literature, music, science, and ethics have all undergone an upheaval in their points of reference and broken all their moorings. I have to say that in our generation, it's much worse. Things have continued in such a form where, the nihilism and the lack of meaning that we see in direction in our cultural structures and representations in music, in the arts, or even worse than in the times that he was talking about. They don't have any particular moral or value direction. That's what we're saying. They've broken all their moorings. Their ventures often seem absurd, purposeless, or devoid of any serious quest for meaning. I'll go even further. They're doing that on purpose. There's much of today's art and literature, and this started in the modern or maybe postmodern era, reflects a purposelessness and an absurdity. As much as maybe those who are familiar with the author Camus, many of his books, talk about suffering that's just represented in a form that's just, without any meaning, without any reason, without any answers. Not that we have all the answers, as we've spoken on many occasions. Not that we have the answers. But yet, on the other hand, we know there is one. We know there is a meaning. We know there's a deep light in things and a great radiance, even when we can't understand. And in a certain sense, he's going to get to that later. That's really part of the problem that stemmed from Christianity. And I'm going to lead that and get back to that later. He continues. History seems to have suddenly accelerated, caught in the whirlpool of a desire to turn over a new leaf, but not knowing where to start. So true today. Everything we see today in the world, the criticism of, for example, here in the United States, the criticism of our past here, of what was once considered, untouchable subjects and untouchable heroes and untouchable values. Everything is being questioned now. There's one area that is not being uprooted. Why? With exactly as it says, with a desire to turn a new leaf. So I personally believe, I mentioned this in a previous lecture, for those of you who are there, this will be a repetition, which is always good. For those of you who aren't, this may be your first time. But a lot of people on the conservative side of what's going on and politically and in culture in this country, obviously they want to go back to the way things were. The people on the left side of things, they want to change everything. They have these new ideas they think they know best. So it's my belief that there's something deeply true going on the left. What I don't mean by that is not their answers, but their question. I don't agree, with not even necessarily to get in my beliefs, but the point is, obviously, many of their beliefs are based in atheism and a rejection of what's generally called Judeo-Christian values, but of Hebrew values. So obviously, I don't agree with any of that. But what I do agree with is that there's a problem, there's something deeply not right that they're seeking to correct. And they also are honestly looking at the wrongs that maybe this country or that has happened in history and emphasizing those wrongs. It's not necessarily a bad thing, because maybe a repentance is needed. Maybe an inspection is a introspection, I should say, is needed. But the answer always has been in just like in the last century, it's almost like a rerun, is let's just disregard everything and we have a new answer, and this new answer is going to solve all problems. We just made it up. We just pulled it out of our sleeve, and now everything is going to be fine because we came up with this idea, which, by the way, has never succeeded in the past, but whatever. In any event, and because there's no way to look back at it and say, oh, it failed, or maybe some of it they're ignoring, whatever the case, it's something new. Oh, so this is going to work. But in reality, this is wrong. But there is a deep spiritual power in this kind of spark of repentance, of saying that we have something wrong here. We have something wrong. I personally believe that one of the deepest wrongs here in America is its materialism and its consumerism. He's going to talk about that in a minute as well. To the extent that even religious belief has been reduced to materialism and consumerism. But in any event, let's continue. So he goes on. So again, he's saying that there's constantly these movements trying to turn a new leaf. And in the end, what happens? They just bring more destruction, and we return basically to without any answers, because we don't have the direction of where to turn. We have no compass. We know that where we are is wrong, but because the values and the fundamentals aren't there, we don't know where to turn. Where do we go? See? Okay. So it is no longer the philosophers who, in the silence of their meditation, composedly put into question the meaning of man's existence on earth. It is the world itself that puts itself into question in all its dimensions. It's a little hard to understand that's the statement, what he means exactly. But I think, first of all, it means that it's in front of everyone's face. It used to be great thinkers would sit in their towers and think about what's the meaning of life. Most people were not bothered by this question. But now it's a question that really eats away almost at everybody. You can say to a certain extent that there were times, this is a little bit similar, may not be exactly what he's saying, but it is part of what I believe, that, and I think that other philosophers have written about this idea. In previous societies, people, okay, all of the flux and fluidity and movement in this society has caused a lot of confusion, a lot of lack of stability emotionally for people. It has its advantage. In other words, there's a lot of mobility. I can do whatever I want. I can be what I want. Now they're telling you you can be whatever gender you want. You literally can. But there's a very big problem with all that. And that the problem is nobody knows who they are. Nobody knows what they have to do. And that's very, very disconcerting. Nobody knows the meaning of what they're doing, why they're doing it, what is the point of life. Everybody feels it. You see, there was a time maybe a person was brought up and there was family, there was country, there was the king, and they knew that they were serving something else. But people don't have any of that anymore. All institutions have collapsed. So there's only left one thing, the person themselves. The person themselves doesn't know why they're here. They have no idea, and they feel a great emptiness. Now, I'm going to skip a sentence here in which he discusses Descartes, something from the philosopher Descartes, which is a reference I'm unfamiliar with. Then he goes on to say, indeed, the philosophers have practically disappeared, without doubt outpaced by the magnitude of the upheavals that have so suddenly modified the external and internal conditions of human existence. So much as change has taken place that it's outpaced the philosophers. Long the queen of the disciplines, philosophy has now become no more than a poor relative, if not the most scorned relative, ready, moreover, to scuttle itself for the benefit of any other discipline that is vaguely scientific, sociological, or psychoanalytical. Now, I want to add something about this. Basically, what he's saying is that we have no more respect for philosophers that people at once did. We don't respect them anymore. We respect scientists, sociologists, psychoanalysts. In other words, we respect science. As you may have heard in the news, we look at the science, right? We respect science. We follow, the phrase is, we follow the science, right? You hear that all the time. We're following the science. The science. The science. The science. The golden calf of the science. So the point is, what he's saying over here is something very profound. And that is, people have lost faith even in human reason. What was the philosopher? He had no laboratory. What was he doing? He was thinking objectively about the great questions of life, right? Meaning, God, what human relations meant, what does it mean to be an individual self? What does it mean when we react with the world? What does it mean to talk? All the simple things. What was the deeper meaning behind all the things that we experienced in life? Nobody cares about it anymore. No one cares. The philosophers themselves don't even have self-respect. They look to the scientists to tell them something. But what does that tell us? We don't even value human reason anymore. We don't trust human reason anymore. All we trust is the science. In other words, we trust technology. We trust physical phenomena, but we don't trust the human mind. My friends, respect for the human being, I think, has fallen to its lowest it ever has been. There is respect for human work, human dignity, and I think that the thing that people have feared for so long about the development of AI, the development of machines and computers, I think there's a great fear that all the fears of those that people had in the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, in which machines started taking over for human beings and doing work, I think we're facing even a greater crisis is where we're headed and where we're facing. In which machines can take over for human beings in almost everything, in all types of function in society. And we'll be left with the question in that case, what is the value of a human being? You see. Of course, and therefore that question will need an answer. We have an answer. But does society as it exists now have an answer? If happiness is measured by GDP, which you often hear in the media, oh, how do you know how happy a country is? What's their GDP? How much are people earning? How many gadgets do they have? How much money do they have in their bank account? So in other words, it's utilitarian and based on material possessions. Now, what happens if a person can't help another person in that way anymore? What happens if a human being isn't needed to make a living? He doesn't have that economic value. Does that mean a human being doesn't have a value anymore? We don't need him here anymore? That's a crisis we're heading to face very soon. And I think he's touching on this with this issue. Once modern society lost respect for philosophers, which represents human reason and human ability to examine meaningfulness, then we're in a very, very dangerous and empty place. Let me go on. This philosophical distress and bankruptcy constitute, moreover, one of the most symptomatic signs of the crisis of culture and of civilization that has so dramatically shaken the 20th century. Now listen to the next sentence. This is extremely important, so listen carefully. I'm going to repeat it anyway, so if you do miss it, it's okay, but listen to this very important sentence. Sophisticated technological power placed in the hands of apprentice sorcerers totally lacking in moral training, has turned mankind into an overgrown body which has developed too rapidly. My friends, this is at the source of all our troubles. Endless technology, medicine, tinkering with the DNA, AI, nuclear weapons, modified food, but no ethics, no objective, unmovable moral values, no development of values. Values are just, whatever, I'm a nice guy. I've said it many times. I often would speak to people at work and they'd say, I'm not religious, I'm a nice guy, I don't hurt anybody. But when you ask them, well, what about, you have any knowledge? Oh, I'm a professional in X, Y, Z. What about your bank? Oh, I'm trying to build a business. I'm trying to become a millionaire. I'm trying to become, a famous scientist, doctor. But are you trying to become a better human being? Are you trying to ask yourself, how can I be a more caring human being about other people? How can I think less about myself? How can I become aware of my Creator? How can I connect to Him? Are you asking yourself those questions? Has your character at all improved from the moment you were born? Now, has it gotten worse? My friends, this is really the tragedy and the great crisis that we're facing. Society is going further and further, is zooming at high speed, breaking the speed limits in technology, in genetics, putting itself in danger of believing that it itself is, has the power of the Creator Himself, but with no map, no compass of how to behave, what to do with all of this. The power to destroy the world hundreds of times over. But when? For what reason? How to use it? There's no compass. There's no map. Nothing. Everyone who has power or who has knowledge is just pushing to improve their own career. That's all. Can you blame them? I can. But the point is that they're given no direction. Not given any instruction. And if they're given something, it's relegated to the back. Well, I'm a nice guy. I haven't hurt anybody. I haven't committed a crime. I never went to jail. As a lawyer, it's always one of the questions you ask, because someone who has committed a felony, they're tainted to a witness. You can claim lack of credibility. So you always ask the witnesses at deposition, have you ever committed a crime? And so people say, well, I never went to jail. I never committed any crimes. And they feel, therefore, they're upstanding citizens. Case closed. My friends, this is not enough. This is not enough. And I think the message of Judaism, one of the biggest messages, and what we're going to touch on, well, tonight if we ever get there, but I think I better cut in with it now because we may not reach that point, is that this is the tragedy of Xmas, the tragedy of New Year's, is the belief in easy answers to spiritual questions, easy salvations. I buy my ticket, I'm done. Let me get back to my physical life and making money and everything. I'm finished, done, end of story. Very good, see you later, and there, bye-bye. No. You see, the answer to the question of meaning, and the answer to the question is God, is that, you know what God is? It's the thing you can never reach. It's the thing you can never understand, but you must. It's what you can never touch, but you must reach out to. And this is the problem. The answer is not, it's something so easy, everybody knows. I don't have to do anything about that. It's so simple. What I need to know is how to become a millionaire. How can I be like Trump and be a billionaire? But in fact, of course, it's good to have a belief in God. But how do we express our belief? What does Judaism teach us, right? Our belief and our trust means we sacrifice. It means we do what's right even though it's not comfortable. It's not convenient. And that's not something just for the few in a monastery someplace. It's for every single person. Every single one of us is a servant of Hashem. Every single one of us who wants to live. As Moses said, I put before you today, right? I put before you today life and good, death and evil. That's all there is to it. Okay. So he continues, thus man is pursuing a dangerous adventure without yet having discovered the supplement of soul, one of our last philosophers judged indispensable for survival. The supplement of soul. Everyone, in other words, like a vitamin. We have to have the spiritual side. We have to have, as I said, that GPS. We have to have a Torah GPS. We have to have God's instructions for our behavior and an understanding, a proper understanding of the world and God's providence. We're missing those things and we continue to go, it's amazing. You know what's amazing? You need a license for everything in this country. Is there anything you don't need a license for? You want to open a restaurant, you need a license. You want to build a little porch on your house, you got to get a permit. Everything you need to get a permanent license for every little thing. But the basics, to be a scientist, to be a doctor, to be a teacher, you should have to have a license. You have to have a Torah license. Do you know the basics of morality? You know there's a creator, that there's a judge who's watching our actions, who's controlling, that the ultimate results come from him, not from us, not from our hands. That should be the prerequisite for every person in any position of authority. If that's not the case, then is it really a question why things are such a mess? The answer is, of course, no. I mean, it's just, he goes on to say some things that, I'll read you this interesting sentence here. So he says the following. He said, in reality, technological progress gives only power. It is not a valid source of learning, and less still of knowledge. You understand? Another important point that really is radiates from Judaism. What is knowledge? What is wisdom? Technology? No. It's not. It's the knowledge of God, right? And as we said, and that's the things I've just talked about, it's the knowledge of conduct and God's providence in the world. So in other words, what is his direct message of instruction, and how do we read the messages in our everyday life? That is the most basic form of knowledge. You know, to understand God's values. That is really the most basic. Not only that, but it's not just that. It's our own map of who we are. Every single human being. There was not one person who was born once, you know, that God had a special relationship with. It's every single one of us. It's a message that's talking to us. And for each one of us also, there's a little bit of a different nuance, as our soul is a little bit of a different reflection of God in a certain different way. Different messages speak to different people more. Everyone, it says that everyone has their own mitzvah that they specialize in, and they do it, you know, to the highest degree, and other people have a different mitzvah. One person gives charity. One person is busy with Torah study all day long, you know. Another person is busy with prayer. Everyone has their own thing that's their specialty, their specialization, right? But in the end of the day, it's the reflection of us. It's who we are in our most deepest sense. You know, it's who we are in our relationships with other people. How to relate to other people. It's not technological power that truly differentiates man from the animal. The Nazi beast is not alone in proving that man can remain at the level of an educated animal, even in the most sophisticated technological culture. Unfortunately, I think we've completely fallen into this trap. I think that we're so wowed with technology, particularly the people who were at the heads of power, the scientists, the tech people, They think that they have, unlimited power to exploit nature and maybe to exploit society and utilize and machines, right, to do whatever, anything. They can create a machine that thinks, a zillion, hundreds of times, or maybe who knows how, quicker than a human being can think, and so on and so forth, and can carry things more and faster, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, this isn't real knowledge. This is just the power to exploit. And I think deep down, we all know this, because it doesn't make us happier, But we're constantly being sold this message. Oh, if only you have this, then you'll be happy. Oh, if you have a bigger house, if you have a bigger paycheck, if you have a bigger job, then finally everything will be good. But it's a lie. Complete lie. It's not true. The only thing that will bring happiness to a person is their closeness with the Creator and kind and true and loyal bonds with other human beings. That's it. Of course, a person has to be healthy, have to have healthy food, have to have the basics, shelter, and so on. I'm not even saying, yes, has modern technology done good things? Sure. But how do we know how to limit it? How do we know it's a question everybody wants to know. All these big shots, they want to know, hey, the world, climate change, we're just using so much. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? They say that the Lubavitcher Rebbe, he never wasted a piece of paper. He'd write on the other side. He had a letter, he'd write on the other side. He wouldn't waste. But the point is that the source of the problem is, what is happiness? We don't need to consume to be happy, and we don't need to continue consuming to keep up the wealth. It doesn't have to be like that. In other words, we don't need to continue. I don't have the exact answer. I'm not smart enough to answer all these big questions. I can tell you that the right balance between proper monotheistic ethics and economics would lead to the answer to these problems, and technology will lead to the answer. In other words, we have to know when to stop. And I think that the 7 laws has the answer when looked in a broad sense as far as what God's will is. If we say first, what is God's will? What is important in life? We'd have the answer. In other words, if I have $100 in my hand, right, and I have, or let's say a better example, or should I take that $100 and save it to buy a new car, even though my car is completely fine? Or maybe I should give it to charity. Or maybe I should save it, to help a poor Torah scholar. Maybe I should buy a book with it. My point is that the busyness with things is unnecessary. Nobody needs these things. The reason they need these things is because they're empty inside. And it's always the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And this is like cancer. Isn't that what cancer does? It eats another cell, another one. It's supposed to stop. Your immune system should say stop. But it doesn't. It keeps going and going and going and going. That's what we're doing. We have to know when to stop, when we have enough. We have a home, a comfortable home. We have heating. We have a vehicle. That's enough. We don't need any more things. And if need be, and sure, and we could look for technologies that follow what God's will, respect for nature, see if we can reduce things, sure, to see what we could do. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, he never traveled any place. He just stayed within Brooklyn 7-7. He never went anywhere. He sent letters, old people sent letters to him all over the world. Though I'm saying that everybody has to be, I'm not saying everyone has to be like that. What I am saying, though, is our answers to go on a trip, is that going to really make us happier? Going on another vacation? I can't tell you how many times that, when we used to sit among lawyers in courthouses, they'd always be talking about their vacations. I don't know what the point is. Trying to pretend you were happier on your vacation than you are right now? You don't fool me, because I don't believe it. And even if it is true, it's fading. It's something that can be, look, if your vacation makes you healthier and you get good, sun rays and healthy air and everything, and whatever, time to spend with your family, those are all wonderful things. But the idea that we live a whole year to go on a 1 week's vacation to escape, or to go on our weekend where we can lazy and do nothing, watch videos, something's very wrong there. Okay. Yeah, and he mentions these things here. He says, never has the future of mankind seemed so uncertain. 2 world wars, horribly costly in human life and morally traumatic, have caused man to lose sight of the meaning of his existence. The fear that the human adventure may perhaps be devoid of all meaning and that history is simply an absurd game has led man to content himself with immediate gratification and seek only the fleeting pleasures of the moment. In other words, what he's saying is, and this is really true, a lot of people after the war, the terrible catastrophes of the world wars, they lost their faith, something that's happening now too. They lost their faith in their governments, in their churches, in their institutions, because they saw, the ravages of this war, and they said, what led us to this catastrophe? How could this have happened? And they became disillusioned, but nothing replaced it, and they just remained empty, feeling that there's just no meaning at all. And what filled that? Consumerism. Immediate gratification. That happened in the 20s after the First World War, and happened again, 50s and 60s, as people turned to more physical things. They came back from the war and they went into business and they tried to forget about everything that happened. And anyways, he continues as follows. However, behind the illusion of ready-made happiness, popularized by our consumer society to the rhythm of technological progress with its daily release of new gadgets. Sound familiar? And this was written in 1980, 82 or something, he wrote this book. And even then, the daily release of new gadgets. Yeah, that's pretty much, that sums it up. Never has there been a wider gap between the accessibility of the superficial pleasures offered by civilization and the moral and spiritual impoverishment in which modern culture leaves man. You see? It's like an addict always turning to another gadget, but more morally and spiritually impoverished than ever. Far from constituting a challenge capable of awakening man into fighting for his human dignity, the daily confrontation with the absurd, the vacuous, and the senseless, combined with the absence of a sense of the future, have led to a shrinking and weakening of the true moral stature of man. In other words, human beings feel less valuable. They don't recognize themselves as value stemming from their character. The constant bombardment with ridiculousness and new gadgets and another advertisement showing us somehow as, oh, I have to have that new yogurt. So delicious. Oh, this has made my day. I'm in heaven. That yogurt, amazing. That's what the commercials are always showing you, that some type of a something, glorifying something, whether it's cleaning, they'll show you somebody, oh, I'm so happy, this new cleaner, amazing. This is just, I'm in love with this cleaner. You know, they forget about their wife. They're in love with the cleaner. Have you ever seen something like this? A commercial like shows you something ridiculous. And what he's saying is people see this, all this nonsense, and you'd think that it would wake them up, but they don't. They're completely numb. They don't respond by saying, enough stupidity. We're better than this. Okay. Now I'm going to skip to the point I wanted to get to. There's many other points. I don't know how many of you are going to stay later because this may continue over the hour. If you want to stay. This is on page 27 of the book. He says, the Holocaust was a festering infected abscess that could only have developed in a diseased body, and that brutally revealed the gravity of the malady. So in other words, he's referring to the Holocaust as an abscess, basically kind of like a symptom in a body, meaning in a civilization that has a disease. What is he talking about? For a long time, different fevers had shaken mankind. Many clear-sighted thinkers have analyzed the causes of the crisis, and it is probable that all of them were partly right. However, no one has put his finger on the most pernicious cause of the disease. The malady had to spread like a festering anthrax and suck up 6 million Jews, including 1.5 million children, in the gas chambers and crematory ovens before the underlying cause of the disease that afflicted mankind came out into the open. Still hasn't explained himself, but he's saying that the Holocaust reflects itself, reveals a deep, deep moral sickness. That's what he's saying. As a former Christian, I have more than others the right and duty to clearly identify this disease. No matter what one may think, its name is not anti-Semitism. He said, people think that this disease is anti-Semitism. No, it's not. That's a shocker. You'd say, well, if the Holocaust is a symptom, the disease is anti-Semitism, right? Obviously, 1 + 1 is 2. He says, no, that's not it. Indeed, anti-Semitism is only a symptom. He said anti-Semitism itself is a symptom. It is the fever caused by the malady, and not the malady itself. However, as a Christian, and I had not known anti-Semitism, not in my youth or in the religious education I had received. During the war, my parents even helped save Jews, and many of their friends did the same. That seemed completely natural. Undoubtedly, modern anti-Semitism has a religious origin, but is only an expression of the malady and not the true malady. Okay, now here it comes. You ready for this? Again, and Chabad takes no responsibility for this statement. This is Dr. Livni, but I felt is very profound. And so here it comes. What then is the malady? It is the theological lie on which Christianity is built. That's it. For the love of truth, and further, for the love of mankind, victim of this lie, it is necessary to speak clearly. So he's saying this point, which I believe that all of you have reached, this is the red pill. This is the whole thing. This is it. This is the lie that's blinded all of mankind, all of civilization. The theological myth built up around the person of, I refer to him as JC, but obviously you know what I'm talking about, right? Everybody know what I mean by JC? Anybody doesn't know? Okay. In other words, the deity in Christianity, I don't refer to him by his name because it's an it's a deification of a person, and idolatry, we're not supposed to say it by name. It is, he does mention it in the book, but I'm more careful on this, so I'm not going to do it. Now, so he's transformed into basically deified and constituting of the mythologizing of an Israel that has run its course. So what he's saying is that the story of Christianity turned Judaism into a myth and concluded that Israel and meaning the Jewish people and whatever they represented are finished. They have no meaning for the world anymore. Whatever they were was Old Testament, done, finished, it's over. This is the depth, this is the root of the problem. Denying to the people of Israel the role of educator and redeemer that according to the Bible it assumes throughout history. There you have the true lie and the source of the malady. So my friends, it's not just that maybe some of you have gone through churches and have realized contradictions and things and you've had your own personal redemptions. It's much deeper. This is the problem, the root of the problem of our entire civilization. And universal ethical monotheism, which is basically the Noahide law, is the answer to this problem. And I thank God that I have 11 participants today. I guess one of them is myself, so that people listening. But this is much bigger than this. And whoever we can affect and have some effect in any way to try to make them understand, it's imperative. It's not just about our own redemption. We're facing tremendous crises. I don't know how many of you, where you know, as far as what people understand, the news and current events, things like that. But I can tell you that we're seeing things that are going on that whatever side you're on, you see that we're headed towards crisis, right? And we have to pray to God for salvation at every moment. But this is the source of it, and we have responsibility because people are lost. They don't know where to turn, and it's getting worse. It's one of the reasons that I chose this path. Whatever limited degree I have, I wish I could do more. But when you turn and you see what's going on in the world, you cannot stay silent. Can you stay silent when we've gone from a place where not only 50-60% of marriages end in divorce, but the number of people who are turned to homosexuality, transgenderism, atheism, postmodernism, the lack of belief in any truth except my own truth, have skyrocketed. The abandonment of the belief in the human being as being in God's image and having natural rights is dissipating. We see it before our very eyes. But this is the reason. You don't think, doesn't technology have something to do with it? Human beings losing their value? Isn't it our focus in economics that partially has caused this? Our focus on GDP being the source of human happiness? Even the idea that the founding fathers, part of our problem lied slightly with their very words. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What happiness? What is the purpose of life? To satisfy some type of sensual pleasures, to become wealthy? And what if a human being can't facilitate that for another human being? Am I worthless now? Do I deserve to live? Once people lose their beliefs in ethical monotheism, we can face nightmares, God forbid, I don't want to even mention. It's interesting that, in the story of the snake, also, it starts off, he's a very religious, he comes to Chava like a yeshiva student. Tell me, what did Hashem tell you? I want to know exactly what the rule is. Tell me what it is, And she says, and he says, no, that's not correct. Just forget the whole thing. Don't worry about it. In a certain way, we face a similar situation in which modern society has understood, has moved past Christianity. has seen it as something primitive, as it was something that was for another time. As he said here, there's a mythological side to it. And secondly, it doesn't answer the problems of modern life. Although I can say that it has things that are better, and he himself, Dr. Livni, discusses that because it has a mirror, it has a glimmer, it has a relationship with Jewish values. And so whatever the case, it has its worth is a society without it faces much greater dangers than a society with it. The only problem is that what Dr. Livni says here is that because of Christianity's problems and weaknesses, it was bound to eventually be rejected, and that respect for it was bound to be lost. And with that, its underpinning, whatever ethics it has, would be bound to be lost as well. And that's what we're looking at today. The question is, how do we fight this battle? How do we communicate with people? If I only had a billionaire, then I would put out slogans, myself, what would it be? Something like, one God, one family, one country. I don't know, something like that. I think of some other ones, but I think of some catchy slogans to get out there, Maybe put some, but also, anyway, so this is really the point. And this is a very, very deep, deep thing. And he goes on to, talk about this at length. There's a whole book about different aspects of this. I'm going to continue to the next line. It's a general idea of this. He says, the metaphysical imposture, meaning of Christianity, not only blocks a path to spiritual awareness, because it blocks our understanding of God, right? Of whatever we can grasp about God. And what is it that God's communicate? How does God reveal himself to us? And that's what Christianity does, because by presenting God in a human form, the transcendent and untouchable and unreachable side, or I say in a different way, the only way we can, there's so much to this, I don't even know if I can do it justice, but we know God through his word. We know God through ideas, not through faces, not through statues, not through people, but through ideas. Through the feelings that those ideas generate and those actions that those ideas generate. That's the closest, in a lot of ways, that's the closest we can get. And it's our soul, it's through our thought, speech, and action, as we've spoken so many times, that brings us face to face with God. It's not a belief in the powers of a certain person, or even a belief in the fact that God exists. That's another big mistake. Of course, we have to believe that God exists, but it's never the focus of Judaism to talk about belief in terms of just acknowledgement. I know you're there. Very good. No, it's not about acknowledgement, right? As we know, it's trust. The focus is always trust, right? Blessed be the man who puts his trust in the Lord. Not belief, not faith, but trust. Because trust means loyalty. Trust means I do things when it's hard. Trust means I'm waiting for your salvation every day. Isn't that the message of the Jewish people to the world? So long, they're still waiting. So long, if you look for the best among them, right? They're still loyal. They're still obedient they're still meticulous, and they haven't given up hope. So, another very important point. He goes on to say, in a certain measure, of course, JC represents for the people of the world what they have been able to grasp in the moral message and role of the people of Israel. In other words, there was a replacement of JC for the Jewish people. JC is seen as an example of what a person should be. That should be, people should look to the children of Israel for that, not to that direction. That's what he's saying. But basically what he's saying is that was placed on this man. So in other words, there's some truth to it, but it's distorted. However, at the same time, this mythical transfer of the historical mission assumed by the Jewish people in the service of mankind to the person of a deified JC eliminates all justification for the continued existence of the Jewish people. Oh, now he's coming back around. He's saying, if the Jewish people are not an example, if they're not the teachers, what are they doing here? Then they don't belong. If there is no longer any justification for their existence, the Jewish people do not exist. And if they continue to exist, they must be eradicated. Moreover, if theologically it is possible to conceive two covenants or two testaments, the Old Testament and the New Testament, on the existential plane, in other words, in terms of actual life, living, it is impossible for two peoples of Israel to exist, even when both are supposed to be fulfilling simultaneously the same mission. There can't be two peoples of Israel, the church and the Jewish people. And so basically what he's saying is that the belief in the fate that Israel needs or will be destroyed and eradicated is a natural outgrowth of the Christian mythology. Theologically speaking, the Jewish people, the present-day descendants of biblical Israel, no longer have the right to exist. This is not anti-Semitism. It is simply the logic of a myth. The silence of Pope Pius XII, after he was made aware of the massacre of the Holocaust, is not an expression of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is only the common popular consequence of the theological myth. The silence of the Pope is the expression of a theological point of view that sees in the massacre of the Jewish people the hand of providence and its vengeful punishment. So, anyway, there's a lot to say. I just picked out little parts, snippets here that I wanted to read. See if I can. Oops, I lost my place with the other one. See if I can find it. So, oh boy, come on, where are you? Okay. Now, there's another point I wanted to make. Okay. So he has a lot of discussions about Pascal and misunderstanding of text and things like that. That's not really what I wanted to focus on. The second point I may have to just discuss outside because I seem to have lost my place mark. So another moment. Basically, what he says has to do with here it is. This is extremely interesting. Okay. Israel, this is the title of this paragraph. It's called Israel, an Experienced Guide for Mankind's Spiritual Ascent. Israel did not receive any magic recipe for salvation. As eldest son called upon to be a witness of peoples, a guide and commander of peoples, it can teach mankind to recognize the reality in which it lives and point out the paths leading to man's fulfillment. The situation of mankind can be compared to that of an alpinist in the plain at the foot of the mountain. His mission is to ascend its flank as high up as he can. Naturally, not everyone possesses the calling of the great alpinist. In other words, he's supposed to climb the mountain. Not everybody is a great mountain climber. Only some people are great mountain climbers, others aren't. Nevertheless, everyone must make an attempt to scale the mountain, for it is the duty of all men to commence the ascension. So this is a type of a parable, he's saying. In other words, we all have a duty to try to go up a spiritual and moral mountain. But the paths are numerous, confusing, and strewn with obstacles, and the mountain is obscured by mist. Only an experienced guide, aware of the goal and familiar with the access routes, can guarantee the success of the venture. Israel is this experienced guide. And its prophets drew up the necessary maps. But Israel never promised that the climb would be easy. Indeed, it calls for great effort and all the willpower that can be mustered. All the willpower can be mustered. Also, a very important point. I want to make that point because another issue, it's a focus of mine, and it's something he talks about, but I really want to emphasize. And that is, I mentioned it a little bit earlier in that lecture, I just want to emphasize it more. One of the outgrowths of the Christian belief, I believe, is that it relegates moral work, the moral objective, it relegates it to a minimal post. It's not the primary need of a person, even spiritually. And I think that we have to embrace Judaism and the laws of Noah with a spirit of understanding that this is our life. That is the lesson that I believe the nations have to learn from the Jewish people. When you look at those who truly represent Judaism, if you look at the prayer books, we say, because this is the life, our life, and the length of our days. It's not just something we do to be good people, because if I'm not a good person, what am I already? Because I need to be wealthy. I also need to be a decent guy. No. It's the other way around. What I need to be is the full growth of myself, and that's my character. I need to express as fully my spirit, my image of God to its fullest. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to serve God to the fullest extent. I'm here to ensure that my relationships with other human beings are as true, they're as honest, as loyal, as loving and kind as they can be. I'm here that my actions should be guided by intellect and conscience, and that should become who I am through and through. To do that, I need things. To do that, I need a house, I need good food, I need to be healthy, I need a car, and so on and so forth. But that's not why I'm here. You see? And to me, I think that's one of the main lessons. And that's, so it's not just, I learned that, Christianity wasn't there were texts, there were different contradictions. And now I found out that instead of going to church on Sunday, I go to synagogue on Saturday. Everything's good. No, totally different approach now. There's no ticket because there isn't any end. You continuously have to climb the mountain. But the work and your servitude is your freedom. Because the more you yearn and the more you feel your shackles, the more free you become. The more you thirst, the more satisfied you will be. Because with the God of Israel, he's infinite, and he touches every corner of reality. He touches every blade of grass, every smile on a child's face comes from him. So our every trial, our every frustration, our every joy, he's a witness to. He's our partner there. And so when we turn to him and we cry out like the shofar sounds and we say, we're lost. I cannot find you, but I'm looking. In that moment, we're closer than we've ever been. Okay. So all the willpower we can muster, you see, it's still, you listen to, even on the right, there's a lot of this talk of success. What is success? What success do we mean? Again, it's success about things, more money, a career, this and that and the other thing. You know what? You know what success is? A success is a mother who sees their children, sees to grow children who are honest, who are God-fearing, who are kind. That's a real success. That's the biggest success we can ask for. To teach others and to mold others' characters, that's the greatest creator. To mold our own character, obviously you can only do that if we mold our own first. But that's the greatest success. If we can touch others and open their eyes to the correct path, and make them realize also that we're here for ethical and moral reasons. We're not here to pleasure our bodies. And therefore, if we have no pleasure, we just commit suicide, God forbid. Like is this idea flying around, euthanasia, old people should just commit. Can you imagine? But this is the reason. Because life is about, is about pleasure. Not about inner happiness, not about meaning, not about a moral, not about the revelation of our spirit, of our soul in the world. Suffering doesn't mean we shouldn't live. Suffering doesn't even necessarily mean we're living a bad life. Suffering is a part of life. Often, if approached correctly, suffering can bring us closer to God. And like a woman going through birth pangs, within our suffering, we can feel tremendous joy. It's possible. Okay, I'm going to continue. Also, man must ready himself for the ascent, and be willing to change his habits and put his life in order and adapt his rate of breathing in accordance with the goal to be attained. Okay, so in other words, there's an understanding that this is going to take work. We need a guide, and we have to prepare ourselves for the ascent. It's not going to just happen if we're not healthy, we can't breathe right. In other words, what? We have to prepare ourselves with the moral minimum and the right worldview in order to go up. We can't just jump in to understanding God and Torah and so on. We don't even have the basics. So now he says, now look what happens over here in this story of the world. Let's see what happens. He says, at this point, a charlatan, voluble, babbler, and pretentious comes on the scene. Claiming to know everything, he costs all the would-be alpinists, makes fun of the guide, and scoffs at his instructions. You know who he's talking about? He's talking about Christianity. Let me read it again. He says, suddenly somebody comes, who's a charlatan, pretentious. He claims to know everything. He costs the would-be alpinists, making fun of the guide, and scoffs at all his instructions. If the impostor is to be believed, there is no need for everyone to exert himself. Or are we not in the era of the cable car? No one noticed the cables, but the charlatan's words are so convincing that everyone settles down for the upward journey. So they're just sitting, waiting for the cable car, taking it easy and doing nothing. You understand the parable and the metaphor he's setting forth here? So, you may ask yourself, why am I discussing this with you? Everybody here is, taking the red pill. And the reason is because I think to understand the significance of Judaism and the problems with Christianity resonate with us all. I don't think it's something that, we're past. I don't even think it's something I'm past. I think it's something that's so important, so deep, so fundamental that even a Hasidic Jew should really study it and understand it, because it explains what we're all about, what human life is all about, and what these problems are. And it's not just, with Christianity. It could be even a religious Jew. Cruise control. I was born here. I'm good. I'm sitting down. Life is good. I'm righteous. No, you have to keep going up. You have to keep moving. You see, that's part of it. But in the deepest, most fundamental, and most destructive way, he's saying is that what Christianity did is saying, all we have to do is, you believe, you're good, everything's finished, we're all done here, nothing to see here, we're good, just go about your business, everything's fine. And this is what we're facing, this problem today. Oh, I'm a nice guy, I'm fine, everything's good, I'm going about my business. That's what everyone would tell me. Oh, you don't have to believe in God to be a good person. Of course, there's some truth to that. But the reality is, can we really face the tribulations of life and the conflicts, the moral conflicts and tests that test us throughout our lives? If we don't have this belief, is it really possible? I think it's very easy for people to point out the injustices others do. But what about the ones that they themselves do, that we do? Can we really do that without an objective belief in God? Can we do it honestly? I don't think so. We certainly can't do it without Torah, without an objective guide of values, and without the specific instruction the Torah gives. We can always rationalize ourselves and say, yeah, what I'm doing is fine and good and I'm upright. Okay, let me continue. Let me read that again. So, if the impostor is to be believed, there is no need for anyone to exert himself. Are we not in the era of the cable car? No one noticed the cables, but the charlatan's words are so convincing that everyone settles down for the upward journey. It suffices to pronounce a few formulas. Moreover, certain members of the party believe they are actually ascending. It is a matter of faith, they say. This charlatan is Christianity. Because of it, mankind has remained on the moral plane in the base camp at the foot of the mountain. My friends, I think that is a good place to stop for tonight. We've gone quite over time, but I think there's a lot to think about. And I can only say that you don't, to whatever extent you can approach friends and relatives, you don't even have to, you don't even have to go say, hey, well, your beliefs is wrong. But the moral focus, that's the focus of our lives, and that God wants something from us. You don't have to get into theological discussions with people. The point is, there's a God, there's a creator, and he cares about our character. That's the most important thing. You want a redemption? Work on your character. That's what counts. And if you do that, we can redeem this world. We don't have to wait for another one. We can do it right here. We can all do it together. There won't be any wars. If everybody would be, it's interesting. The Talmud says that there are good jealousies and bad jealousies. There is a good jealousy. It's a jealousy between Torah scholars. To be jealous of, and the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe said that when it comes to material things, a person should be happy with their lot. In spiritual things, you should be jealous and competitive. You see, human beings have a desire to be competitive. But, one nation seeks to devour the other, be more powerful, have more influence, take what belongs to the other one. But if we all would believe in this, if our main focus would be our spiritual growth, there's enough for everyone. And there's enough happiness to go around, because if we realize that our real wealth, even in this world, is our bonds with our fellow, and the love between people is our true wealth and our true happiness, then we wouldn't be in this position that we are right now. Whether it's facing a possible nuclear disaster at every moment, or facing robotic totalitarianism, which could hit us at any moment. We wouldn't be facing these dooms if people believed in the ethics of Judaism. Let's all pray that the messages of Judaism spread throughout the world before it's too late. And I know it won't be, because God won't let that happen. And before it's too late, Mashiach will arrive and will teach the world ethical monotheism based on the words of the prophets.